We're restructuring for efficiency, Victor. Your role is being eliminated. Dylan Cross delivered the news like he was ordering coffee, not firing the man who'd built the company from nothing. After 14 years of turning a garage startup into a $50 million business, I was being replaced by consultants and algorithms. I nodded calmly and said, "I understand completely." What Dylan didn't know was that I held the keys to everything, and his frantic meeting 3 weeks later would be unforgettable. My name is Victor Kane. I'm 45 years old, and until that Tuesday morning, I was the VP of Operations at Zenith Technologies in Austin, Texas. But I wasn't just another executive. I was the man who'd secretly been running a parallel operation that generated 60% of the company's actual revenue. For 14 years, I'd been playing a game that nobody else knew existed. It started in 2010 when Jake Morrison hired me to help his struggling inventory software startup. The official story was that Jake had brilliant technology and I provided operational expertise. The reality was more complicated. Jake's software was good, but it wasn't revolutionary. What made Zenith Technologies special was something I'd been building in the shadows since day one. A private network of industry contacts who trusted me personally, not the company. Every major client we'd ever landed came through relationships I'd cultivated independently. Every successful implementation happened because I'd personally guaranteed the outcome. Every contract renewal occurred because I'd spent years building trust that extended far beyond Nexus Technologies. But I'd been careful to make it look like company success rather than personal achievement. Jake believed his software was driving growth. Our investors thought they'd backed a superior technology platform. Nobody realized that our entire business model depended on my personal reputation within a very specific industry network. The network had started accidentally. In my previous job managing supply chain operations, I'd developed relationships with procurement directors, logistics managers, and operational executives across dozens of companies. When I joined Nexus, these contacts became my secret weapon. Instead of cold calling prospects like normal startups, I was calling people who'd worked with me for years. Instead of fighting for meetings, I was being invited to strategic planning sessions. Instead of competing on features and pricing, I was winning contracts. Because decision-makers trusted my judgment. Over time, this network became more sophisticated. I started hosting quarterly dinners for supply chain executives, creating informal advisory relationships with industry leaders, and positioning myself as a thought leader in inventory optimization. These activities were never officially part of my Nexus role, but they drove everything we accomplished. The most crucial element was that all these relationships were personal, not corporate. My contacts trusted Victor Kane, not Zenith Technologies. They signed contracts because I recommended our solution, not because they believed in our technology. I'd structured everything carefully to maintain this advantage. Client communications flowed through me. Key vendor relationships required my personal approval. Strategic decisions happened in conversations that weren't documented in company systems. To outside observers, including Jake and later Dylan, this looked like operational efficiency. One person managing multiple relationships, streamlining decision-making, eliminating redundancy. They didn't understand that I wasn't just coordinating business activities. I was the business. The dangerous part was that I'd never told anyone the truth about how our success was really built. Jake thought he was running a technology company. Dylan thought he was optimizing a standard B2B operation. Neither understood that they were actually managing the back-office operations for my personal consulting practice. When Dylan arrived with his efficiency initiatives, I realized the game was about to end. His McKinsey background made him naturally suspicious of any process that couldn't be systematized and transferred. My role looked exactly like the kind of inefficient bottleneck that management consultants are trained to eliminate. I could have explained the reality of our business model. But that would have revealed 14 years of carefully constructed misdirection. Jake would have realized that his brilliant technology company was actually just the infrastructure for my relationship-based consulting practice. The investors would have understood that they'd bought equity in a business that could walk out the door with one person. So I decided to let Dylan proceed with his optimization project. 3 days before my termination meeting, I started activating contingency plans I'd been developing for years. I registered a new LLC, secured independent financing, and began quietly reaching out to my network about a potential transition. The most important call was to Margaret Walsh, Chief Operating Officer at Cornerstone Retail and my closest contact in the network. I'd been managing Cornerstone's inventory optimization for 6 years, delivering results that had saved them millions in operational costs. Margaret, I need to give you a heads up about some changes at Zenith. There's going to be a transition in how your account is managed. What kind of transition? The new management team is restructuring operations. I may not be your primary contact going forward. Margaret was quiet for a moment. Victor, you understand that our contract is specifically structured around your personal involvement in our quarterly reviews? I did understand that. I'd negotiated those terms precisely to ensure that Cornerstone's relationship was with me, not just with Zenith Technologies. If you're not managing our account, we'll need to reconsider our arrangements with Zenith. I completely understand. Similar conversations with 7 other major clients confirmed what I'd always known, but never tested. Our business relationships were personal, not corporate. Remove me from the equation, and the contracts became meaningless pieces of paper. After Dylan eliminated my role, I spent exactly 3 weeks watching Zenith Technologies discover what they'd actually been selling for 14 years. The first crisis emerged within 48 hours. Our largest prospect, a retail chain that had been negotiating a $2 million implementation deal, called to cancel their contract. They'd been expecting to work with Victor Kane specifically, and Dylan's team couldn't explain who would be providing the strategic oversight they'd been promised. Client after client reached the same conclusion. They'd signed contracts for Victor Kane's expertise, not for generic inventory management software. Without me personally guaranteeing outcomes, the deals had no value. But the real revelation came when Dylan tried to understand what I'd actually been doing. My calendar showed meetings, but the documented outcomes were vague. My reports described general strategic initiatives, but the specific details were missing. My client communications were friendly, but didn't explain the technical basis for my recommendations. Dylan couldn't reverse engineer my role because it had never been a role in the traditional sense. It had been a 14-year performance where I'd convinced everyone, including myself sometimes, that I was just an unusually effective operations executive. The truth was that I'd been running a high-end consulting practice that happened to use Zenith Technologies as its delivery platform. 3 weeks after my elimination, Dylan called with the desperation I'd been expecting. Victor, we need to discuss bringing you back as a consultant. Several clients are threatening to terminate their contracts. Which clients? All of them. Dylan's voice had lost its confident McKinsey polish. He sounded like someone who'd just realized he'd optimized away the entire foundation of his business. Victor, I want to be completely transparent. Since your departure, we've had zero success maintaining client relationships. They're all asking for you specifically, and our team can't provide the level of strategic analysis they expect. What level of analysis? That's part of the problem. We can't figure out what you were actually doing that made your recommendations so valuable. The documentation doesn't capture your analytical methodology. I let him continue. We've lost $12 million in annual contracts already, and the remaining clients are demanding meetings to discuss their concerns about service quality. How can I help? We need you to come back immediately. Full restoration of your previous role, equity adjustment, whatever it takes. Dylan, I appreciate the offer, but I'm not available. What do you mean, not available? I mean, I've started my own firm. Kane Strategic Solutions. We specialize in inventory optimization consulting for mid-market retailers. Silence on the line. Victor, are you competing with us? I'm providing the services that clients thought they were buying from Nexus Technologies. That's our business model. No, Dylan. That was my business model. You just provided the infrastructure. If watching corporate efficiency experts realize they optimized away their entire revenue stream makes your heart race, hit subscribe, because Dylan's about to learn that some businesses exist only because of the person everyone thought was replaceable. The conversation that followed was unlike anything Dylan had expected when he'd called to offer me consulting work. Victor, you can't just take our clients. They have contracts with Nexus Technologies. They have contracts for services that Zenith Technologies can't provide. Read the terms carefully. Most of them specify my personal involvement in quarterly strategic reviews. Those are standard service-level agreements. Those are personally guaranteed outcomes that I negotiated specifically to ensure client loyalty. Dylan began to understand that he hadn't just eliminated an employee. He'd eliminated the competitive advantage that had built the entire company. This is corporate sabotage. This is market reality. You optimized away the relationships that generated your revenue. Over the following weeks, Dylan discovered the full scope of what I'd been building parallel to Zenith Technologies. My quarterly dinners with supply chain executives, my advisory relationships with industry leaders, my reputation as a thought leader in inventory optimization. None of it had been company activities. All of it had been personal brand development that happened to benefit Zenith as long as I worked there. When I left, that entire network followed me. Kane Strategic Solutions launched with 7 clients already committed, including Cornerstone Retail and 5 other former Zenith accounts. Instead of selling software implementations, we provided ongoing strategic consulting with guaranteed results based on 14 years of proven methodology. The business model was simpler and more profitable than what Nexus had been doing. Instead of selling technology and hoping clients achieved success, we sold outcomes directly. Instead of competing on features and pricing, we competed on track record and trust. Most importantly, we solved the fundamental problem that had made Zenith vulnerable. The disconnect between what clients thought they were buying and what the company was actually selling. Jake Morrison, the original founder, called me 6 months after my departure. Victor, I need to understand something. How did you build relationships that were stronger than our technology? Jake, your technology was never the competitive advantage. It was just the delivery mechanism. What was the competitive advantage? Trust, results, personal accountability, things that can't be coded or systematized. Jake was quiet for a moment. So when Dylan eliminated you, he eliminated everything that actually mattered to our clients. Dylan eliminated everything that made the technology valuable. Jesus! We built a software company around your consulting practice. You built the infrastructure that let me scale my consulting practice to $50 million in annual revenue. Jake started laughing, but it sounded hollow. 14 years, and I never understood what business we were really in. You were in the business of providing a platform for my expertise. Dylan was in the business of optimizing away that expertise. The final chapter came 1 year after my elimination when Zenith Technologies was acquired by a larger software company for $15 million, less than 1/3 of their previous valuation. Dylan had successfully optimized away $35 million in company value by eliminating the person he thought was redundant. Kane Strategic Solutions, meanwhile, had grown to $18 million in annual revenue with 12 employees and expansion plans into 3 new markets. We'd built everything Nexus Technologies had been trying to become, but we'd done it by focusing on relationships rather than efficiency. The acquisition announcement included a quote from Dylan that perfectly captured what he'd learned. Sometimes the most important assets in a business can't be documented, systematized, or replaced. We learned that lesson the hard way. 2 years later, I received a LinkedIn message from Dylan. He'd left consulting and joined a traditional manufacturing company as director of operations, where his efficiency expertise was more suitable to the business model. Victor, I wanted to reach out because I've been thinking about our time at Zenith. I realize now that I was trying to solve the wrong problem. Instead of asking how to optimize your role, I should have been asking how to protect the value you created. What would you do differently? I'd spend more time understanding what clients actually valued before deciding how to improve delivery of that value. That's a good approach for any business. I learned something else. Efficiency is only valuable if you're not optimizing away the things that generate revenue. Dylan's message ended with an observation that summarized everything he'd discovered through eliminating me. Some people aren't replaceable because they haven't properly documented their processes. Some people aren't replaceable because they are the process. The most satisfying part of the entire experience wasn't proving Dylan wrong or building a successful competing business. It was finally being able to operate openly as what I'd always been, a consultant who specialized in delivering guaranteed outcomes through personal expertise and industry relationships. For 14 years, I'd been pretending to be an operations executive while actually running a consulting practice. Dylan's elimination had freed me to stop pretending and start building exactly what I'd always wanted to build. His frantic meeting 3 weeks after my termination had been unforgettable, because it was the moment both of us realized what Zenith Technologies had really been selling all along. Not software, not systems, not processes, just Victor Kane's ability to deliver results that clients couldn't achieve on their own. Dylan had optimized away the one thing that couldn't be replaced, the human expertise that made everything else valuable.